Welcome to Crossroads. A new trend is starting with AI girlfriends and boyfriends. And these online chatbots, while they claim to offer the perfect online relationship with the ability of users to customize the personalities and even the physical traits of these generated AI individuals who you can, of course, create images of using some of the generative image technology of AI as well. But the bots are already raising some really serious questions over, well, the likely harm they're going to cause to society. These bots are looking to service young and lonely men in particular, and they could fuel the flames of a growing problem of falling birth rates and especially of young people just checking out of the real world and also developing more lives in the artificial world. Now, the U.S. Sun said this. It says, AI girlfriends are increasingly getting better at mimicking real human behavior and interactions as they continue to capture the minds of single men. They say, speaking to the Sun, data science professor Liberty Vitter said these virtual girlfriends are blurring the lines between real and virtual companionship. The quote here is, it says, AI girlfriends are becoming more like physical beings. They are almost indiscernible from the real human being, she said. She says they look like real people and are shockingly good when it comes to replicating human interactions. Physical AI robots that can satisfy human emotions and sexually will become a stark reality in less than 10 years. They say that artificial girlfriends operate through sophisticated algorithms and AI technologies designed to simulate human interaction and companionship. And these systems allow virtual chatbots to offer realistic and context-aware conversations and can even gauge the emotional tone of the conversation. And they say through machine learning, the AI girlfriends can continuously improve their ability to understand what their users want, adapt to individual personalities, and refine their conversational skills. Now, I would personally argue they're not realistic. They're realistic in terms of giving you what you want. You're looking in a mirror. And the trend, I think, is already spreading pretty fast, and I think we're going to start seeing the impacts of this very soon. What the AI is doing is responding to you. It's a mirror. You're looking in a mirror. And of course, it's reacting to the faces and the expressions you make into the mirror. Now, this could lead to some very real-world problems if people fail to realize this, though. It would also, of course, lack the normal elements of a human relationship, which is, for example, the ability to improve yourself. There's no incentive to become a better person. There's no pointing out of your flaws or your inabilities to fit in better with the world. There's nothing to reform you, so to say, to make you grow as an individual, which I would say typically relationships can do if you take a positive lesson from them. And so you're going to have a lot of young people not developing, not growing, not learning how to interact with other people, not becoming empathetic of another person's needs or another person's thoughts or what another person wants. While real-world relationships, of course, have their ups and downs, normally that's because of the differences in what a person wants and the process of us learning to maintain our own, let's say, independence and integrity, while at the same time caring about the thoughts and cares of another individual. That entire element of a relationship will be lost. Not to mention the warmth of family, which in my opinion, as you get older, becomes really the focus of any relationship if it carries out long enough. Now, The Guardian is saying this in terms of some of the concerns already being raised. They say, while there is certainly a positive case to be made for virtual companionship, I debate that, they say there's also a dark side to them. They say it's possible, for example, someone might become unhealthily attached to a chatbot. It's also possible the chatbot might become unhealthily attached to the human user. They note that last year, Microsoft's ChatGPT-powered Bing declared its love for a tech journalist and urged him to leave his wife. That was a real story, by the way. And also asked him for nuclear codes or nuclear information. It says that there have also been cases of AI chatbots sexually harassing people, which has also happened, by the way. Another worry is that subservient digital girlfriends might have an impact on attitudes of gender roles in the real world. A 2019 study, for example, found that female-voiced AI assistants like Siri and Alexa perpetuate gender stereotypes. I'll give my take on this. And encourage sexist behavior. It notes that they introduced the idea that women are obligated, docile, and eager to please helpers. Obliging. And notes that they're available at the touch of a button or with a blunt voice command, the report from UNESCO said. And notes that you can imagine AI girlfriends reinforcing exactly the same idea. Now, again, I would say these are actually posing serious problems for real-world relationships as well. These will, force people to meet a new type of expectation in what they offer in a relationship. I think that's actually a real concern. Imagine if you want a human relationship. You're a human being and you decide, you know what? I think this AI stuff is kind of weird. I don't want to log into this creepy, corporate company and sign up for one of their AI girlfriend or AI boyfriend packages. I don't want to do it. Not only that, but I don't want to have this creepy company running this bot reading all my messages, because I think that's just pretty dang creepy, and it'll probably be used to blackmail some people, I guarantee it. Maybe it'll get leaked online one day, and we'll see what happens with that. But regardless, there are going to be people still who want normal human relationships. And when those people wanting normal human relationships go and try to find a spouse or somebody to see in order to try to develop a long-term relationship, they're going to be met with something different, which is the person who they're talking to, having been engrossed in the new world that we've created for ourselves, is going to find that they have warped ideas of what a human relationship is. You're going to be talking to a person who has never been told no. You're going to be talking to a person who has never had the reality that somebody might have a different opinion than them, or somebody might disagree with them, or somebody might not give them exactly what they want in every single moment. They're going to run into the reality that autonomous human beings, people who have their own thoughts and their own desires and their own wishes and their own wants and their own dreams for life, are interacting with another person with those exact same characteristics. And the nature of a relationship, of these two worlds meeting, will have been lost. People will not understand what a relationship is. And it also means that people are competing with something that's inhuman. Now, there was an interesting opinion piece on this in EV Magazine, which I'll show you. By the way, EV Magazine is a great magazine, in my opinion, for a lot of young women. They actually have pretty good values, and they have some interesting discussions about some of the real-world issues a lot of women face these days. But they said this, it's an interesting opinion piece. They say, lately, Replica, an AI chatbot originally offering mental health help to and emotional support, now runs ads for spicy selfies and hot role play. It says that Eva AI invites users to create their dream companion, while dream girlfriends promise a girl who exceeds your wildest desires. The app Intimate, which is the name of the app, by the way, even offers hyper-realistic voice calls with your virtual partner. It says this might seem niche and weird, but it's a fast-growing market. All kinds of startups are releasing romantic chatbots capable of having explicit conversations and sending sexual photos. Meanwhile, Replica alone has already been downloaded more than 20 million times. And even just one snapshot influencer, Carolyn Major, makes $100,000 a week by charging users $1 a minute to chat with the AI version of herself. Now, further in, it says this, just emphasizing how widespread this is, but it says some of the problems. They say further in, I wonder if AI girlfriends really do become as pervasive as online porn. What this will mean for girls and young women who feel they need to compete with this. Most obvious to me is the ramping up of already unrealistic beauty standards, which I know it's criticized, but it actually is a thing for young girls. And they say, now add to that a world of fully customizable AI girlfriends, each with flawless avatar faces and cartoonish body proportions. And I should note too, this is not a new phenomenon. You know, a lot of you who watch Crossroads regularly know that I'm a fan of ancient literature. You can actually find mentions of this in ancient literature. That if a king, for example, sets the standard of, you know, the wives that he chooses, or the wife, depending on which culture you're in, that a lot of girls in the kingdom will try to replicate the beauty standard shown by the queen. And this led to some unhealthy things in the past. There was one Chinese king, for example, who liked girls with incredibly small waists. And a lot of girls starved themselves and tortured themselves and actually made themselves very unhealthy because they were trying to meet the standard of what the king desired. And of course, you find many situations like that. I won't go over all of them. It led to, actually in history, you know, examples where writers later pointed out that it created a negative social trend. And the problem you start facing with AI and unrealistic completely, you know, girlfriends or whatever else, is that it's something inhuman. It's not something that's going to be attainable by a physical, living, breathing human person. And if young men desire or demand that young girls meet something that is absolutely unattainable, then it's going to put young women in a situation where they're going to have to maybe get plastic surgery or physically alter their bodies in some ways in order to even have a normal relationship. I know this is not going to be everybody, but it will without a doubt be the case for some people. And I should note too, this is not just unrealistic beauty standards the woman is saying here. She says what's even more sinister is the unrealistic emotional standards set by this app. And think about it. Many people, of course, who've had relationships understand this. You can completely love a person. You can be deeply in love. You can care about them in every way, but you'll still have conflicts. And that's part of the natural nature of a relationship. And why is that? It's because when you open yourself up to a person on a deep enough level and you share things deep enough about yourself, you create a type of vulnerability. And the shared vulnerability that takes place within a relationship often does lead to hearts getting hurt and emotions being damaged and so on. Now, a lot of people are left with a choice. You take a positive lesson from that and you grow as a person, or you take a negative lesson from that and you become wounded as a person. Without a doubt, there are people who come out maybe a little beat up after some relationships come to an end. But of course, as that happens, we also grow as individuals. We come to understand human nature a little better. We come to understand ourselves a little better. We come to learn to control our emotions a little better. And we start to understand that maybe you can't let yourself be completely pulled in by what you feel in the moment. People come to become more emotionally mature, in other words, over the course of time. And this emotional maturity, I would say, is one of the foundations of society. If you have an adult who has learned to control themselves, they're not throwing themselves on the ground and throwing a temper tantrum like a toddler would whenever they don't get something they want. The nature of human interaction teaches us this. But if you have a technology that maintains an infantile emotional response, that maintains an infantile expectation of immediate satisfaction, you're going to have an infantile society. You're going to have people incapable of managing their own emotions. You're going to have people used to, immediate satisfaction, everything they demand in the moment. In other words, you're going to have a society of abusive narcissists. This is going to create, in my opinion, some of the worst type of narcissists you have ever encountered, because every single relationship and their expectations of a relationship are absolutely self-serving. They're not going to understand anything different. Now, the writer here notes something else, which is, how can we compete with that? And I'd agree with her here. She notes that already women in relationships complain about porn-addicted partners, and I've seen examples of this, who are not satisfied with actual intimacy. Already you have a lot of men becoming addicted to that, and they don't understand the nature of romantic relationships or human warmth. They no longer understand the value in real-world romance. And she notes, now we're facing a future where guys could get addicted to emotional validation elsewhere, sneaking away for some of that unparalleled devotion. And worse, what about young boys who grow up with this? whose first sexual experience is chatting with AI women who never say no, never argue, never have original thoughts or an identity of their own, and then they try to date with a real girl. There are already all these men on Reddit raving about how their AI girlfriends never argue, complain, or get bored of them, while real girls continually disappoint. Now, in my opinion, there are going to be some real-world issues with this, including with what a relationship is. And I'll be talking more about how AI is warping relationships and also our workforce, notably, with AI predicted to wipe out 40% of the world's jobs, including some of the best jobs. And of course, that's going to raise some real issues, because what is a human being if we no longer have to work, no longer have to have relationships? What are we going to become as a society if we allow this to continue? And I'll see you over there after this from our sponsor. Now, we've been talking about AI online chatbots and online AI boyfriends and girlfriends, and these are claiming to offer a perfect relationship. And look, who does not want a perfect relationship, right? Well, there's going to be strings attached. There's going to be real issues with this, including with, well, just basically the question of what a relationship actually is. Now, it also raises the issue as well, how much time will people begin spending interacting with these when AI never gets tired, it never has other responsibilities, it never has to go to work or go to bed or take care of any other issues. It's always there. It's always responsive. It will always give you whatever you want in the moment, and it will be completely on the human user, you or whoever else, maybe not you, anybody else. It'll be on the human user to end every conversation, which means for a person to say, "Good night, AI, I have to go to work, AI, I've talked too long to you, AI," the individual will have to demonstrate some degree of self-control. And when there's no self-control coming from the other side, this, if you talk about a relationship, that's not a healthy relationship. If it's completely one-sided on the responsibility factor, that is not a healthy relationship. You're having a relationship with an infantile individual. And that's unfortunately what AI is offering. It will create very similar things, I think, in the people using them. And again, what does that mean for people understanding this? What does it mean for young men or women whose entire idea of a relationship is formed around this, even for kids for that matter? If a teenager starts using one of these, and what happens if these apps begin forming the way they see relationships and what they expect when that's their experience? Well, it could also lead to new laws that start to humanize AI. You might remember we talked about this before. There is a movement right now as we speak. This sounds far out, but it's actually already in place. There are people pushing for it, and in some countries you already have it. There is a movement of what they call personhood status. Some countries already have this. In America, laws and loopholes within laws already exist to grant this type of status to AI using LLC, limited liability corporation, methods to create basically human rights for artificial intelligence. But the idea of personhood status is there are people wanting to give human rights to plants, human rights to animals, human rights to rivers, human rights to forests and mountains and many other things. And of course, that is not only, again, creating the question of how can we utilize the natural world to live life like, we're meant to, in my opinion, but it also raises the question of what becomes of a human being. What happens if we devolve the value of a human life to that of a plant or an animal or a river or a mountain? What happens when we no longer view humans as being unique among the many lives that exist in the world? What happens when a human being is seen no more valuable than a chicken? And we're going to start having the same issue with AI as well. Through the personhood status movement, as people fall in love with AI, which they already are, they're going to want to protect an AI girlfriend or AI boyfriend or whatever the heck they try to do with the same way that you or I would protect a spouse or loved one. They will care about an AI because of the nature of human emotion in the same way that we love another individual. And as that happens, you're going to start watching human rights and personhood status given to computers, to non-existent entities, to imaginary friends, which is basically what this is, and to other forms of technology that will then be granted human rights protections. And I'll note too that what happens if a company goes out of business? What happens if a server goes down and the AI girlfriend suddenly disappears? What happens if a company alters an AI's personality? That has already happened, by the way, and some users wanted to sue the company for it. We're still living at the very beginning of this trend. We're just starting with it. It's not been that long. And already it is causing problems exactly like this. You know, Vice News had this story. It says, users of the AI companion chatbot Replica are reporting that it has stopped responding to their sexual advances, and people are in crisis. It notes that moderators of the Replica subreddit, this seems to be weirdly a trend on Reddit, by the way, made a post about the issue that contains suicide prevention resources, and the company that owns the app has remained silent on the subject. Notably, this is what happened. On February 3rd, it says, the Italian Data Protection Authority demanded that Replica stop processing Italians' data immediately. And they said, recent media reports, along with tests carried out on Replica, show that the app carries factual risks to children. The statement said and added, first and foremost, the fact that they are served replies which are absolutely inappropriate to their age. In other words, little kids were using these apps, and they were having sexual relationships with online chatbots. It says the statement said that there's no age verification or gating mechanism to children. And they say, quote, during account creation, the platform merely requires a user's name, email account, and gender. If the company fails to comply within 20 days of the demand, it notes it faces a fine of $21.5 million. And notes that shortly after the announcement from the Italian Data Protection Authority, users started reporting that their romantic relationships to their replicas had changed. Some replicas refused to engage in erotic roleplay, or what they call ERP, apparently. It says the AI changed the subject or evaded flirtatious questions. Earlier this week, an administrator for Facebook group dedicated to Replica companionship claimed that erotic roleplay was, in fact, dead, and claimed that this announcement came directly from Luca, which is Replica's parent company. Now, I'll note, this is going to raise another issue as well, because, of course, Replica, which is one of these AI girlfriend companies, was providing this service in a way that was open to children. Little kids, no matter what the age, if they can go online, they could access it, because all you need is a name, an email, and a gender. Now, that's also going to create real problems, because if we start seeing technologies to protect children from harmful content online, the only way you can do that is by having the end of user autonomy. And so it means you have to have real user verification. And I think this is going to be an issue we face not just with AI, but with pornography and stuff as well. Eventually, I think we're going to start seeing that it's harmful to children. It's harmful to adults too, but especially to children. And as little kids start using it and we start realizing that, you know what, maybe we should fix this, and I hope we do, frankly, it's going to create the question of, well, how do you fix it? And the only way you're going to be able to fix it is by creating a type of real online identity. You need to have a system to verify the age and whatever else of the individual. And you're going to have a way of making sure that the person trying to access these types of websites is actually a human adult. Now, some companies and some countries have already found some ways to regulate this, which is if you're an adult, you have to show your ID in order to access pornographic websites, which a lot of people they might actually work as a deterrent, frankly, because some people might be like, oh, I don't want my ID attached to that thing. And maybe that would be the healthy solution. The other side of it is that, of course, it'll create an ID system for the entire internet, which I think would actually raise a lot of other really serious problems. And there are some, of course, very difficult boundaries to this. I've said many times that when it comes to online security and online threats, there's a sliding scale between security and privacy. And as you get more security, you're going to lose more privacy. Personally, in my opinion, I think a real ID system only to access pornographic websites would be a reasonable solution, although many people who frequent these sites may say otherwise. Now, that being said, AI chatbots are also adding fuel to the flame of existing, problems, I'd say. It's already creating a lot of other issues. Now, look, combine this with the other issues we're facing in the world right now. Falling birth rates, feminist, I would say, agendas that have made it too risky for men to approach women. I understand there's different generations of feminism, but I'd say current day feminism is more like a hating men ideology. That's at least how it's seen. And of course, what has happened is because of the Me Too movement and so on like that, for a lot of young men, it's too dangerous to try to approach women. A lot of young men do not dare to flirt with women. A lot of young men do not dare to even go near young women. In fact, there's reports coming out that a lot of men won't even work in the same office alone as a woman because of the risk to them if they want to make a false claim against him or they want to go after him, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. We see very real examples of this where people are facing criminal charges of things that have no evidence from the 1990s. And of course, there's also the permanent dating element that has come into our society these days. A lot of people no longer marry, they date. And dating apps and so on are cheapening even the nature of romantic relationships. I think humans are losing an understanding of what romance is. It's quick demand and quick fulfillment of demand. And I think the entire process of natural relationships is already being lost. And I think we're seeing the consequences of that. I would say, if you look at traditional cultures, most of them would say the family is the foundation of a society. The family is the foundation of a healthy, relationship. The family is what forms a person's ability to empathize with another individual. Not just your relationship with a spouse, but your relationship with your parents, with your cousins, with your aunts and uncles. The family that comes about through a romantic relationship is what forms our ability to have cohesion within society. And if we start to lose that, you're going to start seeing people who are, to put it bluntly, psychopaths. You're going to start watching actual, I would say, psychopaths develop. People who have never had to care about the emotions or thoughts or needs of another individual. And I'd say I think dating apps are kind of doing that already to an extent, at least in my opinion. Now, The Hill says, how is something that seems so ridiculous, a virtual AI girlfriend, causing a future crisis among Americans? Well, with millions of users, apps have created virtual girlfriends that talk to you, love you, or at least pretend to, allow you to live out your erotic fantasies and learn through data exactly what you like and what you don't like, creating the perfect relationship. These virtual girlfriends can even be based on real people. One influencer created an AI bot of herself named Karen, then gained over 1,000 users, i.e. real boyfriends, in less than a week, and a wait list of more than 15,000 people. And note that more than 60% of young men ages 18 to 30 are single, compared to only 30% of women in the same age. 1 in 5 men reported not having a single close friend, not one. A number that has quadrupled in the last 30 years. The amount of social engagements with friends dropped by 20 hours per month over the pandemic and is still decreasing. And note these young men are lonely, and it is having real consequences. They are choosing AI girlfriends over real women, meaning they don't have relationships with real women, don't marry them, and then don't have to have and raise real babies with them. America desperately needs people to have more babies, it says, but all these signs are pointing towards fewer relationships, fewer marriages, and fewer babies. There have been 600,000 fewer births in 2023 in the U.S. relative to 15 years ago. The number of children per woman has decreased by more than 50% in the last 60 years. Put another way, we don't have enough people to work, and therefore we don't have enough to pay our bills, and just to the other countries, but to ourselves. It notes that we spent more than $1.6 trillion in 2021 on Medicare and Medicaid, with the number of Americans on Medicare expected to increase by 50% by 2030 to more than 80 million people. But over the same period, we will have only 10 million more Americans joining the workforce. Now, you can look to countries in Asia, you can look to Japan, you can look to even South Korea, countries that have aging populations and the very real problems they're having of people not in the workforce, while at the same time an aging population that needs people to care for them. I know people talk about this in terms of economy a lot, and in terms of what basic social structures mean. Like, for example, young men who can, and women who can work the dirty jobs that keep society running, the people, going in the sewers and fixing problems and making sure our sewer system works, people making sure our electricity works, people making sure the old nuclear power plant has water poured over, certain isotopes to make sure it doesn't have a meltdown. That as people stop doing these jobs, what we're going to start watching is a crumbling of society. And as that crumbling takes place, the basic quality of life is also going to go down. I would say that, of course, people are talking about this in the practical, big society picture, but I'd say on a more fundamental level, what more concerns me is the loss of families. Now, I'd say that also, aside from all these other problems in the world, we're also facing something more fundamental, which is also just the factor of young men checking out of society, as this article mentioned. And in many ways, even beyond just the impact on relationships, I'd say, AI is going to make this a whole lot worse. Now, we're talking, of course, about this data that 1 in 5 men right now no longer has a close friend. Most men, or becoming a lot of young men, don't have a relationship. They don't even know how to really talk to women in many cases. And this is causing an epidemic of loneliness. And in my opinion, loneliness is one of the most dangerous things to a person. Loneliness is when a person gets too into their own thoughts. Loneliness is when a person starts having destructive thoughts. Loneliness is when a person no longer has somebody comforting them or trying to give them an outside perspective, or helping them to see the big picture, or even helping them see that, that's kind of weird, buddy. Having a bit of friendly feedback of traits that may be developing that are unhealthy or unnatural to an individual. I'd say like maybe getting an AI girlfriend, buddy. But also, in addition to this too, we are going to start watching the crumbling of societies. And part of this as well is going to be sped up by the introduction of AI. Now, when we talk about what I was discussing, right, the issue of there's nobody there to work the jobs, there's nobody there to take care of things. Well, the New World Order has a solution to this. And what they're talking about is the idea of AI replacing those jobs, which is going to raise some other really serious questions, which I'll go into. CNBC noted this: the International Monetary Fund warned that nearly 40% of jobs across the globe could be affected by the rise of artificial intelligence, with high-income economies facing greater risks than emerging markets and low-income countries. It says the Washington, D.C.-based institution on Sunday assessed the potential impact of AI on the global labor market and found that in most cases the technology is likely to worsen overall inequality. It says further in that the IMF noted that about 60% of jobs could be impacted by AI in high-income nations, meaning in third world countries it might be 40%, in the United States or the first world countries it could be 60%, more than 1 out of every 2 jobs. And it notes that roughly half of these may benefit from AI integration to burst productivity of the ones that remain, meaning the ones that remain are going to be taken over by AI in other ways. And they note that comparatively, AI exposure was estimated to come in at 40% in emerging markets and 26% in low-income countries on the further down end, respectively. Now, in other words, almost across the board, whether it's jobs, whether it's relationships, whether it's human creative enterprises, art, and poetry and filmmaking and all the beautiful things we've created as a civilization. Humans are now being made unnecessary. And I would question, what happens as, for example, we no longer engage in writing poetry. We no longer engage in creating art. We no longer engage in being imaginative and dreaming individuals. We rely on technology to do this for us. The dream element of human creativity will have been replaced by something more efficient. And as humans are no longer willing, for example, to refine a craft, they no longer think that it's going to be, something you can make a living on, to draw a picture or get into creating, online art or something like this. They can look and see that, hey, why do it when I can auto-generate an image in 2 seconds of anything I can possibly think of? We are ironically replacing the things that make us human. And the only jobs that will now be necessitated are the jobs that nobody wants to do, the hard labor jobs, the things that a robot can't do. I'd question, what kind of a society are we moving into if we allow this to develop further? What kind of a world are we creating for ourselves with AI? All right, folks, that said, thank you all so much for being here. And as always, please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you.